Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And I am feeling much better this week. Thank you for all the well wishes I had this week. Yeah, it was a little bit rough, but I have my voice back, thankfully, and I'm feeling a little more human. And I can read your mind. I showed you how to do this autumn scene. Where is it? Behind me here, right here. And we spent 2 weeks working on that one. But I know many of you are thinking about Christmas and gift giving and things like that. So I thought I'd better balance this off with some quick and easy trees and landscapes and things like that. So let's take a look. And one of the first things that we're going to do in order to get this process simplified is I'm not even going to draw. Not even going to draw. I'm simply going to practice, and I'm going to incorporate backgrounds as well as I'm illustrating this. You can see by the little samples that I put on the thumbnail there. I've got some trees at night. I've got northern lights where we have kind of a silhouette. We've got kind of a snowstorm kind of thing going on here, and basically a clear day. Now, a lot of these are winter themed because of the time of year that it is. And we've already had our snow. We had a boatload of snow actually in southern Ontario last week, covering up all the leaves before they got taken away. But hopefully it's supposed to warm up, so maybe they'll be able to collect them anyway. All right, so I'm going to be using my usual paints. I'm going to be using some round brushes here. I'm also going to use a little fan brush, a little bit of salt, table salt. I may use some white paint as well. Because I want to keep things simple here, I'm going to forego the masking fluid scenario, and the only other brush I'm going to need then is maybe a small one, and I probably won't use this one very much. All right, so if I am thinking about simplifying, you're all familiar with the salt, I presume. But one thing I've discovered is that some people really struggle with salt, and the good news is it may not be your fault. When I was trying out a few things, I noticed that not all the paints react well with salt. So I'm just going to take a little scrap here, and I'll show you what I mean. So on this little scrap here, I'm going to put some of my cobalt blue. Now I'm going to put this down nice and wet so that all colors are wet at the same time, and then I'm going to sprinkle some salt on. So this is going to make you feel better, because if you've struggled with putting salt on, it could be just the paint you're using. All right, so I'm going to be using I'll use some cobalt blue here. Then I'll use a bit of cerulean. Now my cerulean happens to be a hue, which means it's a mixture. Still nice and wet. Make sure everything stays wet here. And I'm going to put down, I thought, well, I'll use a really nice dark blue. And so I went to an indanthrone, I think it's called, indanthrone blue. This is actually a core color, QOR, made by Golden. And that's going down too. And you can see it's really nice and dark. And I thought that'll be really good for my dark trees or my dark shadows. Well, here's what I discovered. When I put salt on these colors, let's sprinkle a little out on my hand. And I put some salt on there. Now, this is a little bit like waiting for a Polaroid to develop. It will take a few minutes for this to every granule of salt is absorbing the paint around it, and so that's what creates the effect, is that absorbing of the paint, and so it makes it like little snowflakes almost. And the reason that I'm using salt in doing some of my trees is because it gives either the illusion of leaves, or it's going to give you the illusion of frost or snow or little branches covered in snow, things like that. So I'll set this aside for a few minutes, and I'm going to just start preparing a couple of scenarios. Now, you may want to use some of these ideas for your own cards or your own ornaments or things like that. Gift giving little pictures or something of that nature. And I'm going to keep it Christmas themed, but I'm going to show you how that this can also be applied very easily to other seasons. So this card here that I have, I've just sectioned this off. These are like little 3-inch squares, like nothing big. And it's going to give me a chance to sort of try out all the seasons. So I'm going to try, first of all, winter, because that's what we're talking about here. One of the things that I would suggest when you are doing trees, do the far away ones light, do the ones up close stronger. But if you're doing like a row of trees, vary them up. So you can change the color, you can put warms and cools in there, but what I wouldn't do is stir it up. Okay, you can put the colors sort of side by side, but don't stir them together. Especially if you've got a warm and a cool, you're going to end up with something muddy. All right, so I said I wasn't going to draw, so I'm going to just start off by wetting the first one. I'm using I believe this is a 10 round. Now I haven't taped this down or anything, so it's going to curl up a little bit, you'll see. But it's small. I'm not really concerned about making a masterpiece here. I just want to try out some of the effects. So I'm going to take some cobalt blue and I'm going to put a tree right here. That's a tree. Then I'm going to take some cerulean and maybe put another tree. What about a warmer tree? So maybe something like I'll use some raw sienna. Okay, raw sienna is a little bit more yellowish. We'll do something like that. Now, when I said easy trees, this is what I'm talking about, right? So, and I'll go back to my cobalt here. All right, so I'm going to keep all my little tree sections separate. And now, if I'm painting this as a card, maybe I have a moon in this scene, or maybe I have a sun or something like that, I might want to think about the direction of the light, right? So these might be making shadows. So I'll just maybe pull some shadows from these. Let's pull this down. Something like that. Okay, so maybe this is snow, maybe this is trees. Doesn't look like it now. Right now, it just kind of looks like a mess. But I'm going to put some salt on here. And you might be wondering, well, why don't I do the sky? And the reason that I'm not doing the sky right now is because I want to put the salt effect on the trees. I don't want the salt effect on the sky. So, and you'll notice I put down pretty strong color, right? I put it down on wet paper, which means all that wet on the surface is going to vastly dilute some of my color. I didn't go quite to the edge here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more of my cobalt over here. Just so I go right to the edge. Now, I want to make one of these trees taller. Let's make that one taller. That'll do. All right, so we've got salt that's developing, and it's got to do its thing. And I'm going to just take, I could take anything really, but I'm going to find my little stylus. Here, this is my little stylus tool. Now you can use anything. You can use your fingernail. for this. You can use a credit card, you could use a palette knife or something like that. Any number of things could be used for scraping into this. So usually whatever you've got on hand. And I'm going to put in my tree trunks. So I'm gonna use my palette knife, I think. So I'm gonna sort of hold it firm by putting my thumb on the end of the palette knife, and I'm going to scrape it. So it's not like this, it's not flat. It's more of a scrape, and I'm using more just the tip than anything else, but not straight up and down. All right, so now depending on how the dryness of your paper, so let's say this paper's really wet. If I scrape into it, like I just did this bit over here on the side, what's going to happen is I'm going to scrape into it, and I'm basically scoring the paper, and all the paint's going to gather right in those spots. But I can quickly get in a lot of branches and things like that. Wipe it off every once in a while. And yeah, the salts, some of the salts flicking and that sort of thing, but mostly it's going to stay exactly where it was, and it's going to continue to do its thing. So let me zoom in a little bit more. I think I could get a little closer here. Okay, so you can see that where I scored where it was really wet, the lines went dark. Over here, it's starting to get a lot drier. So now if I continue scraping, I can get lighter lines. When this paper starts to get tacky, I guess when the paint starts to get a little tacky, that's when you can scrape this. And I'm really using pressure to actually scrape away the paint. And then I can get those light colored, almost birch-like, birch bark type of markings. Now you could come in with white paint and you could paint them all in and everything else, but that's extra work. So we'll just leave this as it is. Now let's bring back this one here. Now you saw that I put salt on all of these colors. Look at this one. Almost nothing is happening on this particular color. Isn't that strange? Now, I'm sure that has to do with the composition of the paint and whether or not it's staining, things like that. But basically, I'm getting almost no effect on this dark. So, I could cry about that, or I could use that to my advantage. So in this example, just to show you how I did this one, I used that in my background because I didn't want that icy look on my sky. I wanted a smoother sky. And I later came in and flicked on some white paint for stars in the sky. But for the texture in the trees, I used the salt. And this background was in there at the same time. So if I wanted to put that in there and then sprinkle it on, I know that I could use this as a good night sky color. But it's not going to be very good if I'm trying to get the texture on the trees. Just going to try and keep up with the chat today. Mostly greetings. It looks like it's cold in a lot of places. All right, so there we have. Now, one thing I want you to notice is the bright colors that I used. It's great when you don't have an actual reference sometimes, because when you have an actual reference, your tendency is to want to replicate what you're seeing, especially if it's from a photograph. Photographs, unless they're greatly enhanced, often will print out a little dull, and especially shadows, right? So this is a very quick and easy way to get some really nice effects for a sky. And I could put like a nice blue sunny sky in this, but I'm going to wait for all this salt to do its thing, and I'm going to wait for that to dry and all of that. Meanwhile, I'm just going to knock off anything that was loose over here in the next square, and I'm going to try something new. So let me give you an example of how I did this one. I went with not as bright colors because it is night. You're not going to see the same bright colors that you would see at nighttime, but you'll notice I put in some of that same warmer color, only I used more of a burnt sienna here. I scraped in some of the lighter branches. I did actually come in with my small brush and added some darker branches later, but I'm going to put all of this in all at the same time, and I'm going to lift out some of the snow. So I will start off once again by wetting my area. I will leave a little sliver so that those two don't run together. Now you might be wondering, well, why am I not drawing this first? As soon as you draw something, you start to get careful. Careful's not all it's cracked up to be all the time, because if you are careful, you tend to choke up on the brush, and you're right up there, and you're using just the tip, and you're being oh so careful, and and then all of a sudden you've got these really careful, tedious looking trees. You know, very laborious looking. So I want to keep things a little bit more free and easy. So I'm going to take cobalt blue, a little bit of Payne's gray. I don't want to make my trees too dark, but a little bit of Payne's gray mixed into that. I kind of like the purple in this. So I'll put a little pink in that too, a little permanent rose maybe, and make that just a little bit on the purpley side. And I'll do a sort of a fat tree, and then I'll do a tall skinny tree. So to make things a little bit more interesting, I want to make sure that everything's not too much alike. And I don't want to have straight line across. I think it's more interesting to have a little bit of hill or something like that. But my paint and my brush is pretty well loaded, but it's got to have lots of color. If you're too shy about color, you're going to put the salt on. It's not going to show quite as well, but mainly your overall color is going to end up too light because of the water that's on the paper. So go stronger color than you think you're going to need. Okay, so I'm going to do another kind of tree here. I'm going to do one that's got a little bit more space inside of the tree, little gaps and things. That kind of a tree, you know, where you have like sort of little clusters of branches instead of being like a full tree. And I'm going to use some burnt sienna, I think. I'll do a short one. Oh, it kind of went straight across there. Let me fix that. Just make some interesting shapes. It's a lot of fun. Now my clusters kind of burst a little bit. They didn't stay exactly where I put them, and if that happens, that's usually because your paint was runnier than the surface. If you use sort of stronger color, less watered down, those shapes will stay put a little bit better. So I'm putting a little bit more strong color in there. And a little less water, so hopefully it won't spread too far. Let's make this one a little dark at the bottom as well. Just balance that off. It's just fun to play with this stuff. You know, if you're just doing little squares like I'm doing right now, really takes the pressure off. Now, I could scrape before I put the salt on, or I could scrape after I put the salt on. It doesn't matter. And I'm not really scraping so much as I'm scoring. I'm going to use my stylus this time. And I'm just going to pull this up through this tree. And I'll put in a few, I'll just drag, and you can see what's happening is the color's following the little channels that I'm making with this tool. And this is fun. This is just like using a pencil. Now, there's no undo button for this one. I mean, if you score it, that's what you've got. You can't undo it. But I'm going to do some more of that, and I think I better get my salt on there before things start to get too dry. Let's get my burnt sienna a little stronger here. But I'm going to put in, this is going to be a night, so I'm going to put in that indanthrone, and I'm going to bring that in from the top, and you can see it's a really dark color, right? But I know that it is not going to have the same the salt's not going to affect it the same way. So I'm kind of painting this in between, putting it on nice and dark because I know that I really want it to look like a night sky. There we go, and if I don't come right into the trees, it gives this sort of light glow, like moonlight kind of glow on these trees, which I really liked. It was a bit of a happy accident, actually, to discover that this wasn't going to work the way I thought it would. I was kind of like, oh, but I do like that. It's kind of fun. And I just like playing sometimes, you know, just see what paints do. It's not always totally expected. Okay. Once your paper dries, your salt effect won't work. Okay? It's a one and done kind of thing. You can't redo it. I'm just sprinkling on. You don't need a ton unless you want a really strong effect. Now in this case, I wanted it to look like kind of a snowy landscape in front, so I just took my paper towel, if I can get a hold of it here. I just took my paper towel and got an edge to it, and I just did a little blot to pull some of that off. This got a little bit dry, so I can't pull too much off there, but you get the idea of it. I can do a little bit of that. What's the difference between indanthrone and Prussian blue? I would have to look at the actual pigments in there. The indanthrone tends to be a little blacker looking. Or sorry, the Prussian blue tends to be a little bit blacker looking, whereas the indanthrone is this sort of gorgeous dark blue that probably leans more towards a blue than a black, but the Prussian tends to be a little bit more black looking. I'm not implying that it has black in it. It may, but it tends to look a little bit less blue. More dark and less blue. All right, so these things are still developing. The one thing you need to do when you are using salt is let it dry 100%, which takes a long time because every granule of salt has pulled in all that moisture, all that wet paint, and it's holding on to it in every little granule, right? So it's holding on to all of that in every granule of salt. And so every granule of salt is going to take a lot longer to dry than the absorbent paper will. Once you've seen a lot of the nice texture that you're looking for. Sure, you could take the blow dryer to it and stop the process, but you cannot speed up the process by blow drying. You're going to defeat it, because you will stop that absorbing that's creating the effect. So let it absorb until you're satisfied with the effect. And this one, I've just let it go, and you can see I'm getting, in certain colors, you get like a lot of effect. I wouldn't say there's nothing in here, but boy, there's not much to see. I think a lot of what you're seeing here is just the granules of salt sitting on the paper, but it's not lifting. So this has a lot of staining color in it. I'm quite sure of that. I could dig out the actual paint, but it could take me a while. I have a big box of paint. But I'm going to go on to something else. All right, so we have this one, which is more of a daytime, brighter color, whiter, a little bit more shadow, so I imply that there's going to be some light there. And this one is more night-like. I might even come in later and put, because I don't want the effect of salt in my snow on the ground, I might put a little bit of color on the ground so that it doesn't feel like daytime. The bottom of this and the bottom of this are pretty much the same, so I would like to maybe darken this down if it's nighttime. All right, and getting lots of salt everywhere now. But I want to talk about let's talk about another season, okay? I'll stay in the theme of using salt, but I want to talk about a different season, because this works in all seasons. Like, we can use this in fall colors. The same thing would apply. You would apply your background much the way that I did here, painting around trees rather than through trees. As soon as you paint through a tree, you're overlapping warms and cools, which I talked about with my big autumn landscape last week. But if I start off once again by wetting a square, try not to hit my previous one. Okay, so if I'm doing autumn, I'm going to, of course, pick autumn colors. I'm going to use some yellows. You can use whatever yellows you have. It's not, whatever ones you think look like autumn colors is fine. I don't have to tell you every one that I'm using. I'm going to use some reds, some warm reds, and things like that. Now, just before I start painting this, I think I'm going to let a little bit of that water soak into the paper. Because if it's soaking wet and I touch it with wet color, it's just going to explode. But the key here is don't have the brush with color so wet. You can't have both wet, or just there's no control whatsoever. You could take your paper towel and do one of those to take some of the excess off. Make sure that the puddle you're creating isn't overly wet as well. So I'm leaning over just to see how much shine is on there. There's quite a bit, actually. Let's just test it out. It's still going to spread pretty far, so I'm going to make this color a little thicker. And if I make the paint a little thicker, it's not going to spread so far. I do find a lot of people struggle with the control on a wet surface. And this will help with that. So I'm going to use some yellow, but I better make sure that it's not as runny as well. And I'm trying to vary it up. So, make one tree taller and thinner, and another tree fatter, and that sort of thing. You can even bring the bottoms down, to make one look behind another one, taller or whatever. And I like to put in some evergreens. I like to mix in the evergreens. They really show off these colors nicely. So I'm going to take some of my yellow. I'm going to mix some Payne's Gray with it. That'll give me a nice deep dark green. Now I think that that's going to be too wet, so just going to make sure I blot my brush. And I'm going to tuck an evergreen in behind here, and basically it's a long stem with progressively longer lines. Now you can take a look and see whether or not the branches go up or they go down. You know, there are different coniferous trees that will go either way. I'm working around the red tree to make the red tree look like it's in front. But I do need to make sure I'm making a variety of greens in here, a variety of reds. Like I'm going to come in with a bit more color as well. Just making sure that there's some variety. And you can see I'm not really being too careful about creating a tree. The tree is actually being created by the wet surface. So I like that. I like when we get all this variety just organically with the wet paper and the flowing color. So I'm tucking a red tree in behind. You can see I'm dancing around the greens, because if I mix that red and that green, ooh, that's definitely going to be not a nice color. So, but I can put them in between. I can tuck them in between, and yeah, they'll blend a little bit. That's fine. A tiny bit is fine as long as I don't paint on top of the green. I'm still safe. So I'm going to go maybe some dark colors at the bottom and a little bit of dark color at the bottom of the yellow tree or something like that. Put another yellow tree back there. So I can put like a whole bunch of autumn colors there. Let's put a bush or something here. I don't know. I'm just playing around. And I'm going to put some salt on this before things begin drying. You can see I'm not using very much, right? It's just a little bit. And then sprinkle over the area. And hopefully we get a nice effect. But all those colors mixed together would not be very nice if they were actually stirred together. But if you just place them where the paint's not running too much on the paper, you place them side by side, they'll be just fine. What is the difference? Oh, okay, read that one. As well as absorbing moisture, the salt repels the pigment. Yes, it does. Actually, this doesn't work as well on smaller particles. Yeah, definitely. If you're using like a different kind of salt, like a pickling salt or something like that, where the granules are much larger, it will also kind of push it away as well. I'm going to go crazy here with some salt. There we go. Okay, so I could scrape into this now, or I could wait and I could add in some lights or dark branches, whatever I want to do. But there is a difference between the fall and the winter. With the winter one, let's slide this over for a second. With the winter one, I was able to do like the entire skeleton of the tree, all the branches, all the trunk, because the trees are basically naked. When they're not naked, okay, so you have actual foliage on the trees, the foliage hides a lot of that. So we need to sort of just see these little pockets where we can see branches and things through. So when this is drier, I think I'm going to use a brush, like a small brush, and paint in between some of the foliage, right? So I would put the tree trunk in, then I would skip and maybe just show a few of the branches in between, that sort of thing. And it's something you have to remember when you are doing other seasons. When there's foliage on the tree, you can't do the full skeleton. It looks like somebody split the tree in half and where the trunk is. So I'm going to knock off the excess salt again. I'm going to have a bit of cleanup to do. But let's say it's springtime. Okay, springtime, and you have blossoms on your trees and things like that. Same thing, same kind of thing can happen. You can take and wet your background, just like we've been doing. So you can wet all this, and these would actually make nice little gift tags, actually. The 3" by 3". May not be the gift, but it would be kind of nice. So when I think of blossoms, they're either white or they are often pink. So I'm going to use a little permanent rose here. And not too wet. I'm blotting my brush here. Let's just try this out. All right, I feel like that's okay. I'm going to put some stronger color on here. And I may do a like a white one as well. So how am I going to make the white blossoms? I'm going to take something more like a blue-gray, and I will put that on. This is going to be my white blossoms, believe it or not. Kind of a blue-gray here. And maybe behind that I'll put, let's put an evergreen in behind that. So just blot my brush so it's not too wet, so I can actually get a shape here. And I want to be careful I don't put it right in the middle. I'm going to put it here behind the tree with the white blossoms, and I'll put the branches coming down a little bit just for something different. Oh, this good and dark. All right, so everything has to do with the branches and what's on the branches before trunks and before all the other stuff that I'm putting on here. So I'm going to take my salt and maybe I'll do a green tree behind that as well, maybe a lighter green tree. And salt. Oop. Now this is where you might want to actually try some different sized salt. I'm just using, just to keep things simple, I'm just using regular table salt. I'm going to be fairly generous with this because I want it to look like lots and lots of blossoms on these trees. So my blue-gray, I just took a little bit of my cobalt, mixed a tiny bit of Payne's into that. I think that's what I used. All right. So what's really going to make this look like a tree with white blossoms is, first of all, the salt's going to push the paint out of the way. Then I need to put something dark around it in order to give the impression that that tree is actually lighter than the background, lighter than the sky, lighter than the grass, etc., etc. So it's kind of a strange looking start to a painting, but this actually will work quite well. So as I said, salt takes a while to dry, and so I'm going to set this aside and I'll bring this back and we'll work on this a little bit more, but I just want to give it a little bit time for the salt to do its trick. I'll try not to peek at it too much. I'm going to put this behind me. That way I won't be tempted to look at it. All right, but let's talk about simple shapes. And one that I'm sure you're all thinking about right now is snow-covered trees, because it is Christmas time or, well, we're heading to Christmas time. It's not Christmas time yet. But even if you're not a person who celebrates Christmas, the season's coming, and we are in for some snow coming up. At least here in Canada we are. And winter scenes are actually wonderful to paint. So in this instance, I think what I would like to do is I'm going to put a background in first. So I'm going to do something a little unconventional. This is where we get to really play. I'm going to use more of a purple sky. So I'm going to take my cobalt blue, my permanent rose, right? And I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. Now that to me looks like it could be a little bit darker. Let's grab a little bit of that. I have some dark color sitting beside it, so I'll grab some of that. And in my first square here, now I'm going to work on dry, but I've really filled up my brush. And I'm going to paint a nice wet, like almost like I'm wetting the paper kind of thing, only I'm doing it with paint. So I'm putting in some nice wet color here. And then I'm going to switch up to more of a pink. And the two are overlapping here. Now I'm going to rinse out my brush again, and I'm just going to paint clear water from here on in. Might have to change my water soon. It's getting pretty murky. Okay, so I've got this purple to pink thing going on. You don't have to do your sky this way. You can do your sky in blues or greens or purples or whatever you'd like. Orange, sunset type colors, feel free. But I'm going to take, now I don't have any salt or anything on this one, so I'm going to just take my dryer and dry this really quickly. Sorry, I just threw my remote on the floor. Kind of wishing I'd softened that a little further down, but I can always darken that. So when you add a lot of water to either your paint or on the water on the paper surface, your colors end up much weaker, right? Have you noticed that? So I'm going to go at this one more time. Just let that cool a little bit. I'm going to go at this one more time just to get this a little deeper. Rinse my brush and just painting with water now. I'll rinse my brush again and continue painting with water and just sort of walk my way down here. Try to get those to blend, and I can actually use the tilt method to help blend that and get a nice sort of gradation happening there. I can tilt it back and watch the paint flow. Boy, one of my favorite things with watercolor. Sea salt versus table salt. Yeah, you'll get, either will work. You'll get different effects. I can tip side to side here. I'm just going to paint a little more water at the bottom. play around with your skies, you know, get those the way you want them before you put in your trees on top. A little spot here that doesn't want to take any paint. Might have had something on there. But I'm going to dry this now. The wetter the color, the better the blend. Okay, so I just want to think simple shapes here. So if I want simple shapes, I'm thinking more silhouette type of thing. It's easy to get bogged down with making all the needles on the coniferous trees or all the leaves on a deciduous tree, that kind of thing. But I just want you to think about just the overall silhouette and see what you can do with that. So I want to take and let's make this a dark version of my purple. So I'll take Payne's Gray and some Permanent Rose. Ooh, put a little blue in that too, I think. So I'm making a darker purple basically. My paper's dry and I'm going to put a background in here. So let's just make life simple. I'm going to just put a bunch of jagged lines to indicate the tops of other trees, and I will just let that dry. Now that's going to dry, and then I'll want to make the next mix a little darker because, as I said at the beginning, you want things in the distance to look paler. Now that doesn't look very pale, but it will once it's dry. I've already created a bit of perspective by having the sky graduate from a purple to a pink to a lot lighter color, like almost the white of the paper. Now I'm going to add a little more Payne's Gray to this to darken this mix. A little less water, of course, so I will blot my brush. And I want to bring my trees, I want close ones and I want far ones. So the close ones are going to be, of course, taller. And so I'm going to bring a tall tree right here, just kind of map in where I want to put my tree trunk. Now this is where I hold my brush up more on the end, because if I start choking up on my brush, I end up with a really tight, controlled tree. But let's just do some basic shapes here, back and forth, like little sweeps of the tree. And I can bring this below the line because the tree is closer, so therefore it can be below the line. And it will show up on top of that background. And just being a little bit darker than the background, it will feel like it's in front. It'll feel like it's closer, because things that are closer are darker. You see more contrast and that sort of thing. All right, so there's one that's closer. It's just a silhouette. It's very, very simple. I could do one that's a little further back, so I will make a shorter one. Sweep, 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 both directions. Often you'll get sort of one side of the tree is a little bit longer than the other, like the branches are a little longer. That's usually because of the wind direction. So they become windswept, if you will. And I'll do another one but taller. So I'm trying to vary the different heights of the trees, the spacing of the trees, and so on. Okay, so kind of a simplified tree. It's just a silhouette. And if I want to do a little bit on the snow, I'm going to go taking some of my purple here and maybe just sweep in a little bit. It might be a little bit dark, so I'll just dilute it a little and sweep in some little drifts in the snow, that sort of thing. Just keeping it very simple. You know, there's some cultures that will really embrace the beautiful simplicity of design. And so that's kind of what I'm doing in this small scale. Can't afford to put in all the detail. It's just not going to allow me to in such a small space, unless I get out my little tiny brushes, but that would be kind of silly. So I'm just going to leave this, and I like that it's just beautifully simple. If I wanted to put in stars into this, which I probably could have, I would have done that before putting the trees on, because if I take my little fan brush and I spatter stars on there now, I'm going to have stars on my trees, right? So it's going to look more like snow than it will stars. But I could make it snow. Why not, right? I could make it look like it's snowing. So I would take my white. I'm just using some bleed-proof white here, and I got a little fan brush here that I love to use, and you can see it's seen better days, but it does the job. So I'm just getting some on my brush, making sure it's not caked up too much, but it's got some color on it. And I might even give it a little tap, very quick tap, so that it won't give me big blobs. I want this to be fine. See, it looks like snow because it's on top of the trees. But if I wanted it to look like stars, I'd have to do this part of it before I put the trees on. So think about when you're putting whether you want stars or whether you want snow. Now it's funny because there's not a cloud in this sky and it's snowing. So this doesn't really make sense. It would have to have some sort of cloud cover. If it's snowing, it makes sense, right? So I might go back in just with some of my dark color and just go over some of those little stars I put on my tree. And I would just cover those up. But it's kind of hard to do now because I've got my background there too. So this won't make sense unless I put clouds in the sky. So just something to think about. Yeah, you don't want to have to do that twice. So put the tree on last, and you'll be in better shape. If you wanted to put some snow on these trees, now it's obviously late day, we've got the sun setting or whatever, you probably wouldn't want to put bright white snow on there. So let's go with a tinted white. So I usually use the lid of my jar for tinting my whites. So I'll take my white color here. Let's not make it too watery because it won't cover well if it's too watery. And I'll pick up a bit of my purple. Now I really rinsed out my brush so that I don't get my palette contaminated with white. But I can put a little purple into this. And if I wanted to put snow on my trees, I'd put it on top of the branches. So it would be not a bright white. That would look a little strange. I guess I'm going to have to make that spot a moon or something. That funny little... And so any of this snow is, of course, going to be on the upper side of all of these branches. But that's going to bring me to the next sort of idea for painting snow-covered trees. Just something quick, right? I have this on manual focus. It shouldn't be going in and out of focus. I don't think, is it? It's not too bad, I guess. It seems to be in focus. All right, so I'm just going to leave this one for now. I want to talk about daytime and, you know, bright, sunny, snowy type of landscape. Would I paint some deer on these? Oh, why do I use bleed-proof white instead of gouache? I just find that the bleed-proof white is doesn't lift the undercolor. Like, you know, it's called bleed-proof because it means the color below, like whatever you're putting it on top of, doesn't come up through the color. Basically advertising its opacity, and I just find it's really opaque. And so I mean, I have gouache, but I haven't found a white gouache that covers quite as well. So it's just personal preference. Both will work, of course. A deer, huh? It would be a silhouette, of course, if I did a deer, but I certainly could do a deer. I think I would have to, I don't know if I could do that now. This is pretty dark, but I would have a deer. They have kind of a box body, like a little box, like a sawhorse type thing. Spindly legs. The back is like it curves back and then down. And as long as it's not alarmed, the tail would be down. Now we've got a couple of ears to stick on it. And I don't know if you want a deer with antlers or not, but this would just be a silhouette. And that's my little deer. So from imagination, right? Now, in order to make it look like it's in the snow, I'm just going to smear some of this so that it looks like it's making a bit of a shadow. And I made its nose bleed, but my poor deer has a nosebleed. But you get the idea of it anyway. All right, so on to the next one. I am going to show you that bright, sunny, snow-covered trees. I want to use maybe a different blue, just for variety's sake. I'm going to use this one's Sea and Sky. So I don't have this one in my palette. I can maybe put this over here on my... I have another palette over here that you don't see, but I can maybe put a little bit here to try some of that. I've got a manganese, I've got a cobalt blue deep, I've got a Antwerp, French ultramarine, phthalo, Prussian, indigo, all the things that are related to my blues here. Some of them are staining, some of them are opaque. The manganese is very opaque. But I'm going to start off with maybe a phthalo. I really like phthalo. It makes a beautiful sky color, but it is a staining color. So if you put it on, you won't get it off again. Let me zoom out just a little bit so that you can see. So I'm going to start off with, and it's powerful. It's a powerful color. So I'm not going to use a lot of it. I'm going to use just a bit here. Rinse my brush. Continue painting with just clean water. Let it sort of flow down. I can also tip my paper to help it flow down. But I just want to get a gradation here for my sky. I think I'm a little obsessed with gradations. Where the smudge is in the sky, maybe you could make a moon. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, Margot. The smudge on my purple sky. I don't know what that is. It just won't take the paint for some reason in that spot. Could be a greasy smudge from my fingers or something like that. I don't know. Okay, so I've got, this is phthalo, and I'm just going to have this graduate down into a white down in here, or clear. Both my buckets my water containers are getting a little bit dirty, but that'll be okay. Now, I'm going to have to dry that before I can do anything else. Because this next one, I'm not going to be working on wet. I've done a lot of stuff on wet. I didn't do these trees on wet. I did those ones on dry. I have to say that not having a drawing in the beginning sure helps me to experiment a little bit more and takes the pressure off. You know, the whole staying in the lines business. It takes the pressure off. All right, so my paper's not very flat because it's not taped down or anything, but I'm going to work now with, I'll use a little bit of that phthalo, and I might even put maybe just something like this is a cobalt turquoise. Hang on a second. So there's my phthalo. There's my cobalt turquoise. I wanted to have some variety in it. I think if you just paint with one color, things look a little static. So I'm using really wet color. I'm using a round brush. This one's smaller. What is this? A 7. But it's wet color that I want to use, because whenever I'm working on dry, I want to use wetter color. Otherwise, the paper's just going to grab it. So I'm going to work from the top of the tree down. So I'm going to just start here with my color, and I'm painting the entire tree. So I'm going to paint my entire tree with this color, but I will switch to some of my cobalt turquoise in some of it, just to make my tree a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more interest in it, I think. So I could make a little bit more of the turquoise. And see, I'm not holding my brush up here and carefully doing all of this stuff. If I hold it way back here, I can have a lot more sort of spontaneous brush mark making. Okay, and maybe I'll go back into little trees in the background or something like that. Let's make those really simple. But I really want to do all this while it's wet, keeping everything wet here. Here, we'll do a medium-sized tree, and it can overlap another tree, that's fine, and then it gets a little bit filled in here. All right, so those already look like trees, but what I'm going to do, instead of using salt, I'm going to just take a little bit of water and touch it in a few places, kind of deliberately making some blossoms. Smaller trees, smaller little blossoms, I guess. But I'm looking to make these blossoms because these are going to help to differentiate sort of branches and make it feel like there's actual, independent branches. As this starts to get a little bit drier, I can come in and start to even tuck in some of the actual green of the tree underneath these. But I think I'll take a little bit of this color, and I'm just going to put a little of this in the snow, just little sweeps of that in the snow to make it feel like the snow has some sort of dips and valleys and that sort of thing. If it's a bright sunny day, I might even have shadows underneath these trees, which I can add afterwards. But I'm not even gonna wait. I'm gonna take some almost just Payne's gray. I'll put a little yellow into it. I have some on my palette already. And I'm just gonna go sort of underneath some of the branches. Not gonna think about it too much, just sort of dabble here and there on the wet surface. And maybe out on some of the extended branches as well. Just keeping it simple here. And just little dabbles and dashes, smaller at the top, a little bigger at the bottom. And all of a sudden you've got trees that have the greenery under them. Now I can still come in and add some more touches with water to intentionally make some more blossoms. I don't want to go great guns with huge puddles or anything like that. These are just little bit of wet on my brush and just tapping in every once in a while to help soften up a lot of this. And when you touch it with the water, it will kind of push the dark color out of the way a little bit, make room for a branch. Now this is if you had a strong sun, for example. I might take some of these blues, especially the phthalo blue, and I might make some shadows. So let's make shadows go off to the right here. And over here, that sort of thing. Maybe there's one that we can't even see and that would come in from the left side, but just a darker shadow going along the ground. And voila, we have sun. So that's like a super simplified, super easy way of doing that kind of thing. All right. Let me see. Maybe I can lift a bit out of here and turn this into a moon, right? Let's see if I can do it. Paper towel. blot my, there's my moon. I've turned it into a moon. These little tiny minis are like pressure free. You know, if it doesn't work out, and this is all, by the way, on the backs of other stuff that I've demoed and things like that. So it's nothing precious to me. But that gives you, I want to introduce you to the idea of winter isn't just blue and white. It can be turquoise. It can be red or purple. It can be a whole array of different colors. So make your paintings, your cards, your ornaments, whatever it is you're painting, make them interesting. That's kind of up in the corner. I'm not sure I like that, but doesn't matter. So I'm going to bring this back. Woohoo! We've got lots of salt action happening here. All right. So I'm going to dry this because it's still not dry. But I'm going to dry it so that I stop any more from happening, and get the granules of salt dry enough that I can scrape them off. And I have to make sure that they're dry. If I try to scrape them off before they're dry, it'll just smear. And so that's not a good scenario. I'm going to come in, but I'm going to start adding some skies and things, which I'm doing afterwards because I don't want the salt effect in my sky. And I could certainly come back in and, redefine things if I want to, but this is a good sort of starting off point. All right, so I'm going to take my favorite way of removing my masking, or not my masking fluid, but my salt, is with a palette knife. So I'm going to just take this and scrape. I'm going to move this out of the way so I don't get salt flicking into my palette. You want to get all this off. You don't leave it on there. The rest I can brush off with my hand. All right, so you can see the mess I've made. Toss that in the garbage. All right, so let's start on the work left to right, and I want to put in a sky. Now that the salt's all off of there, I'll be able to put this sky in. Now, if you want the tops of the trees to look like they're soft, you'll have to intentionally go in and soften the edges as you are putting in your sky. So I'm going to use that sky color I put out, the one called Sea and Sky. It's actually kind of an opaque color, but it's really quite a lovely color. And I'm going to put this one in here. So look at the variety of blues I've got going on here. So I can come up to this and get a nice sky in there. Just put it in nice and wet so that it blends in all your brush marks. Okay, so we've got some nice blue sky there. I can maybe, since I'm using this, maybe I can use this in some of my others. Actually, I'll use maybe a phthalo on a little bit of a phthalo on this one, I think. Rinse my brush, and I'm going to leave a couple of light areas so it looks like maybe there's some soft clouds in there. And if I want a softer edge, I would just rinse my brush and blot it, and just gently laying my brush down, I would just gently go along those edges, trying not to really come into the trees too much, because as soon as you come into the trees, your yellow tree with your blue, you know what's going to happen. I don't need to tell you that. All right, so just to indicate a couple of clouds, I'm just leaving a spot or two in the sky. Boy, I'm going to have to soften this one. There's my little sunny sky. And I'll do my sky on the last one as well, since I'm just kind of getting all my skies out of the way. And this one I'm going to use that phthalo again. And I'll do just a sort of a classic blue sky kind of day. Now, if my sky is darker than my blossoming tree, those blossoms will look light. As long as my blue sky is darker. Because everything in watercolor is relative to other things in your painting. So I'm going to just soften this up a little bit. Get down in between the trees and things like that. Not making a big project out of this. I just want to get some blue in the sky. Rinse out my brush. Just soften a couple of edges. So just running it along there. I don't want to destroy my salt effect there. So I'm just softening a couple of edges here. To soften edges, you lay your brush in the clean area, not in the wet color. Okay, so I have skies on all of these now. And I'm going to look at developing it a little bit more so that I get a little bit more of a feeling of dimension and things like that. So I've got blue trees here. Why don't I take some blue and separate one tree from another? So I'll do that by negative painting. Here, I'm going to just come in here and just with a little bit of color, I'm going to separate the trees. Let me go a little darker. That didn't show very much. And just going to put a little bit of dark to separate one tree from another. I don't want to destroy the salt effect or anything like that. I just need a little separation. I could do the same on my gold tree. Put a little bit more color just along the edge. Let's go burnt sienna maybe. And just go along this edge. That tree's tucked in behind, so it's kind of got shading on both sides. So I'm just going to soften that. And I'm being very gentle with this. I don't want to destroy it in my salt effect. I think my salt effect is the best part, right? So I want to get a little bit of that in there, and I'm going to maybe put a little shading under the trees. Not that winter trees are going to give you a lot of shade, right? Because there's no foliage on them. But I could put a little bit in there. I think I'd like to come back to this one and maybe put some white paint on here and get the white branches of the trees just to show up a little bit more. I could put dark branches on too, but it feels cool and wintry, and I think white would be the better option here. Carolyn's asking if this was a greeting card, soft strokes of glitter glue would be lovely on branches and hills. Yeah, I'm not sure I would use glitter glue, but I do have something called iridescent medium. Where are you hiding here? Oh, this stuff here. This is iridescent medium, and it's kind of shimmery and sparkly. This needs a good stir, but you can see it's kind of shimmery and pearly looking. I have used gum arabic and something called magic dust. I think it's called. All right, it's not at my fingertips right now, but it's called magic dust, and it's an extra fine, like glitter kind of thing. So you can brush a little bit of gum arabic onto your trees or whatever you'd like, if it was a card, or on your snow even. I'll maybe add some of this in just so you can see what this looks like, but this does need a good stir. Okay, so I will come back to that one once it's dry. And I'm going to come over here to this autumn scene. Now, this autumn scene is probably going to have some bits of the color on the ground as well. So I'm going to take some of the golds, some of the reds. Now, the greens aren't shedding their leaves just yet, the trees that are still green, but I would have reds and golds in here, and then I would have probably some green grass. So I would take some green, and let's go lighter green. Just in between. I don't want that to get too much detail in there though. So I'm just going to soften some of this. Just a hint of the color combination, but I don't want to stir it together. That's going to be important, not to stir it together. And yeah, so that won't look like anything until the branches go in. Right, the tree trunks and the branches. That's not going to feel like a complete image. It's still going to look a little bit strange, but okay. So just a few hints of the yellow and gold on the ground, just like kind of like what we did last week. But I'm not going to take a lot of time to fuss and fiddle with that kind of thing. Now, we will have, for our spring, our blossoming trees, we will need to have some green grass. Of course, it's going to be a lighter green because it is spring. All the colors are a little bit cleaner, brighter in the springtime. And this doesn't look like there's any blossoms on the ground, but I'm going to go right under here with some green. By the way, I'm working on Arches 140-pound cold press paper, and I'm softening these edges while I'm going. That's what I've used for my demos, because that's generally how I paint, is with 100% cotton paper. You're going to find your results could vary depending on the kind of paper that you're using. Some of these effects will work better if they are on cotton paper. Okay, so I'm going to leave this. This looks very like spring color-like. This one looks very autumn. This is very dead of the winter, kind of. The days are short. I notice it's getting dark so early now, especially since our clocks have changed. And this is winter in the daytime. So that's going to give you some range of all the things you can do very similarly and create this. Now, details. So I'm not putting any buildings and such into this. I just dropped my brush and it rolled away. Hang on a second. So I'm not going to put any like buildings into this, farms and things like that. I'm keeping this like super simple, but I want to take a nice dark. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to use, I'll use some Payne's Gray. Now I may have, well actually I'm going to use a brown. I think I'll use some burnt sienna. I'll use some burnt sienna with a bit of Payne's Gray in it. And I'll do the brown tree first, or the gold tree first. And this is wintry, so I can do the whole tree. I don't have to do just part of it. I don't have to keep stopping. I can just paint some delicate trees. Now you'll notice one thing that I'm doing is I'm not going in with a super, super dark color here. I see many people when they're trying to paint winter trees is they put the dark so dark. And it tends to overpower. So I've got a dark tree in there. I'm going to take my bleed-proof white here, and I'm just going to use white in this case. And I will paint whiter branches and tree trunks. You don't have to do them all. Yeah, I don't want to hide any of my salt effect. I think my salt effect is half the point here. But I can do some really fun little branches. And there's kind of a combination of light and dark colored branches in there, but I think that's going to be just fine. So if I had shadows in my snow, you might see a shadow come from the tree trunk like this. Let's do a darker branches on this tree, and then we'll do a little bit of shadow there, and I'll go more brown in this shadow right here. No, I'm going to go more blue. Let's stick with the blue because it is on snow. It's not the reflection is, or the shadow is not going to be so much the color of the object as it is going to be the color of the snow. So I've got some little shadows there. Let's blot them so they're not so strong. This one, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but you know, just making the most of my time. I wanted to tone down the snow here because it wouldn't be that white at nighttime, right? So I'm going to take a really diluted purple here. It's just, I don't want to go too dark with it, too much Payne's Gray or something in it. I'm just going to go with a very light watery purple. Too much. Let's a little more water, spread it out. I do need it to be lighter. I just didn't want it to be dull. Okay, so just just to dull that down. If it were moonlight, you could have similar type of shadows on there, but I will need to put in some branches here, I think. So I'm going to take a darker color and put in some darker branches, and I did some with the little stylus tool, and that works really well for some of the very fine ones, but you may want some stronger tree trunks, in which case you may have to actually come in with some paint and create that. But I'm not going to invest a lot of time. I think if you suddenly get to this point in your painting and all of a sudden you're carefully putting in all the tree trunks, suddenly it goes from having this wonderfully loose, flowy effect to tight and contrived. So I'm just going to keep it as sort of simple as I can. There we go. And so that feels more like a night, a winter night kind of thing. Other than maybe putting some stars in the sky, I could do that. Now I won't spatter them because they will go where I don't want them to. But you could spatter everywhere and it would look like snow. But if you want it to look like stars, I'm just going to touch a few in here. I mean, you could go crazy and paint in a little moon if you wanted to, like a little crescent moon. Let's go with a little bit of a moon thing here. I don't know, I'm just playing, right? So that could be kind of an interesting thing to add in there. And now, my autumn trees. Basically, I don't need too much here. I will need some darker tree trunks, of course, and I'll use burnt sienna, a little Payne's gray mixed into that, gives me a good dark brown. And this is where I can come in and really create some of the tree trunks. So never looks right until you get these in. Just a few little, don't overdo it, just a few hints in there. It can be darker at the bottom and then darker at the bottom and then finer and lighter towards the ends of the branches, of course. Kind of made a mess there, but here, we'll just do something like that. But I love how the salt just gives the impression of so many leaves. I mean, it works for frost, but it works for leaves as well. So you can tell it's a favorite, right? And we'll do a... I don't like to do my tree trunks too straight. They look a little too cultured and, you know, straight from the greenhouse. They don't look as natural. So I like to try and make them a little bit crooked, a little bit more natural. So, of course, when it gets to the ground, it looks a little silly, right? So what looks silly, of course, is that there's no shadow. So I need to come in with a little bit darker green and create some shadow on the ground. That might be a bit dark, but I think it's going to dry a lot lighter. So I'm just going to spread this out. And maybe that tree in the back, you see this big evergreen I got back in there? That's probably making some shadow too. And I'll just come around some of the blossoms and such. But all right, so quite a few different seasons we've got going on here. I think this one I'd like to put a few more darks in the branches and stuff. But this tree here, remember I just did a blue-gray, kind of a purpley gray maybe, and all that salt. And as long as you're doing it really lightly and things around it are a little darker, this comes across as being white blossoms. So I wouldn't leave them stark white like the paper. They tend, you know, even white blossoms have shadows, right? So you're gonna see little bits of things going on there. But let's just look at this the way it is here, and maybe a little darker on the tree trunks. You know, if you've got good strong sunshine, you may have a little bit more shading on maybe the underside of these tree trunks. I went really wet with my brush there. Probably a little too brown too, but you know, make them dark enough that we can actually tell that that's making shadow on the tree trunk as well. But bleeding into my grass there a bit, so I'll just blot some of that off. I softened up all my paints before I started, and they are really gooey. So sometimes when I pick up my paint, it's like almost more runny than it needs to be. But there we go. And you know, you might get the same sort of effect here. You need some more shading on the ground underneath the trees where the little fallen leaves are and things. And that in turn makes the trees themselves, you know, the brighter the leaves that haven't fallen, makes those stand out a little bit more. So much what you do depends on you know, what you want to have light, and put it beside something darker to make it look lighter. Okay, so I'm just reading back. Terry was asking, do some colored respond better to, I'm sure you meant to say salt, than others? Yeah, that was exactly what I was showing in the beginning, where this indanthrone really didn't do anything with the salt at all, whereas the cobalt and the cerulean blue hue worked fantastic with the salt, right? So some will definitely work better than others. Like this is the most sort of extreme case I've come across, but before you actually put it into a card, you know, you're spending the money on the card and the envelope and you're painting it and all of that, try out whatever color you're thinking of using, because I'm sure from brand to brand even you're going to get some variations. So try your colors out. Make sure it's going to do what you want it to do before you commit to doing a completed painting using that, and you should be all right. Just playing around now, just fiddling with shadows and things like that. A little bit more dark on the ground, adding in tree trunks and things like that. So a little bit of green beyond those trees and that sort of thing. You can fiddle to make it the way you want it to. But let me just read through, and then when things are a little bit dry, I'll try some of that iridescent medium so you can see what that would look like. I probably wouldn't put that on my other seasons, but I would put it in my winter ones if I were doing a card or whatever. But I didn't do any drawing here, none at all. That was kind of fun. Let me see. I'm just reading backwards here in the chat. I did the deer. As weird as he turned out. Where is he? He's over here. Let me zoom out so you can see all these ones that I did. 6 little paintings in. Oh gosh, we went a little longer than I thought we would today, but I guess it doesn't matter. I got a lot done. I really like these trees here. These are kind of fun too, but the salt effect's very, very useful. Okay, so Gretchen said PB60 versus PB27. I don't know what that's in reference to because I'm scrolling backwards. But I believe that was in reference to the question between indigo and indanthrone, I believe. And yeah, just reading back, make sure I haven't missed any questions. I think I'm okay. So I'm going to take a moment now, and I'm going to take a little bit of this iridescent medium. It'll give you a chance to see what that'll do. And I'll brush a little bit of iridescent medium on maybe this little guy here, or maybe this blue one here, maybe both of those. So I'll zoom in again so we can see that, and you'll be able to see the effect. Okay, so now this stuff here, it's got little metallic flecks in it. Keep it away from your palette. Even in your brushes, if you're using your brushes, you might want to use a separate brush just for this. But you should be able to rinse it out of your brushes pretty well. You won't be able to rinse it out of your palette. So I'm just going to grab a synthetic brush. This is just a cheapy round, and I'm going to dip right into it, and I'll brush this over top, and you'll see it'll look a little whiter until it dries, but it will make it feel and look pretty frosty. You know, if you're looking at sort of freshly fallen snow, or you know, that sparkle that snow gets right after a storm. So I could brush this on, and I feel that it works better on blues than it does on other colors, but I can put it on anything. So I'll put it on my gold tree there as well. I don't use this too much. Keep this to do at the very end of your painting. Okay, so I don't know, can you see the shimmer? Oh, you can definitely see the shimmer if I do that. Looking straight on, you don't see it so much, but you can tell that there's some sparkle there. This doesn't get all over your house quite the way that sparkle does, actual glitter does, but we can do the same thing maybe on this tree here. Now, I've got a lot of dark color on this one, so I want to be careful that I'm not obliterating or smearing my tree branches. So not a lot of brushing, and I'm using a very gentle touch as I do this. And it'll dry maybe a little bit clearer than what you see right now, but this will definitely feel like frost. So for those of you that are making cards, and I mean, let's face it, cards, you're not going to invest the same amount of time in those that you're going to do in a full-size painting. You want something quick but effective. You know, maybe you can borrow some of these ideas and try them out. The fun part is if you just make little 3x3s, you'll probably come up with even stuff that I haven't covered here. You know, that's where creativity comes from, just playing around and just getting your brushes moving, and will often give you the effect. All right, so maybe you can see one more little dip here. So you can see the frostiness of those trees. It gives this kind of a shimmer. So you can just put it where you want it. You don't have to cover your whole card. I'm of the school that less is more, but sometimes if I've got a lot of foreground, like in something like this, you know, might just sprinkle a little across the snow. Maybe a little touch of it on just the snow parts of the tree. You know, you could do something like that. And that's just, you know, just a little hint of it. And I think I prefer just a little hint than too much of it, but to each their own. That's what makes us all different. All right, so I'll put the lid on that. Just going to have one quick look here to see if I have the glamour dust stuff. Nope. Well, this is a gold one. I have one that's more like crystal, and it's in the craft section. You know, if you go to your local art store, it'll be in the craft section. And I don't like the gold so much, but I do like the clear one. Ah, there we go. So this one's the clear crystal-y one. And it's a little bit like this, except that the little granules are sort of multicolored, a little bit multicolored. So, and it's a powder. So what you do is you just sprinkle it where you want, or you paint gum arabic onto the spot that you want. And so if I were to take and say paint some, this is just gum arabic, which you can buy. You can see that I don't want to tip it too far and spill it, but let's just put a couple of strokes across in the lighter parts of the snow, and then I'll maybe just put a few bits on the tree itself. I won't worry about the distant trees, but I just put a little bit on there, and this has a little cap that, and then I can just sprinkle it on. So you can see that this is more sparkly. This is the kind of stuff that gets everywhere, but it is kind of fun, and it really does give that sort of holiday sparkle to things, more so than, you can see it's a different effect than the shimmer of the iridescent medium, right? So the iridescent medium is a little bit pearly versus this one, which is more glitter. Okay, so then we just knock off the excess, and you can see just little sparkles. So the sparkle dust I actually really like for cards. I don't use it too much in paintings, of course, but you can see the difference, how they look. This one actually does sparkle, whereas this one's more of a shimmer. And yeah, so I'm going to have that all over the place now. It's best to do this on top of a piece of paper that's folded, because then you can tip it and pour it back into the bottle. If I was smart, I would have done that, but I didn't. And so if you fold it, then you can easily pour it back into the bottle, the excess that you knock off. But you see, then it's a little bit more just sort of random. I didn't put much on there, but it's enough. It would be nice on a card. And that'll take a little while to dry because of the gum arabic, but just leave it to dry naturally. You don't have to blow dry it. You don't want to blow dry the sparkles anywhere, but I think I can wrap it up at this point. I hope you enjoyed discovering all the different ways of painting, like the easiest trees ever, right? All seasons, that sort of thing. But, of course, we're all thinking Christmassy kind of stuff at this point, and hopefully you got something out of that. Could I clarify the sparkle product again? Sure. This is called Glamour Dust. Okay, Glamour Dust. Sprinkle on glitter. You find it in the craft area, like Michael's would have that, and probably a lot, maybe even a lot of stores that carry the bottles of paint like this, and you would need gum arabic. So you paint the gum arabic on. Before that dries, you sprinkle the dust on. You just shake off the excess, and you are left with only the areas where you had the gum arabic. It'll only stick to those spots, and that'll be your little extra special bling for your card. So did I miss anything else? I don't think I did. I have a problem with the ready cut cards. Do not work well with water, wet on wet, and paint lifts and smudges easily. Yes, the ready-made cards that you buy that are called watercolor cards, make sure you're getting one that says watercolor. I mean, it's better than the creative cards, I think they're called. Strathmore makes it, and they make a couple of different kinds. They make a one called creative cards, which is intended more for mixed media, stamping, collage, that kind of thing. Not so much for watercolor. It doesn't stand up to watercolor as well. So you get the watercolor cards, but they are not the cotton. That's why I was mentioning I'm using mostly Arches paper here. This is the back of things that I've demonstrated, and it's wonderful for trying out little ideas like this. This really didn't take me very long to do, but it could be a good jumping off point to doing like a whole series for cards for friends or family, whatever. Gift tags, anything like that. Like I could actually use this as a gift tag, so it would be very nice. All right, so I think I have caught most of the questions, and I don't think I missed anything else, but anyway, I actually, just talking about the glamour dust, I actually did use that on a painting a couple of years ago, or last year, maybe 2 years ago, I think. I think it was during COVID. I did a painting of these Christmas ornaments, and for the first time ever, I used glamour dust and this iridescent medium on a finished painting, only because the subject matter of the painting just was screaming for some bling, right? And so I decided, it's not something I typically do, but I thought it would be kind of fun to do on this one painting. And seeing as it's a painting that you would only hang at Christmas time, I thought I'll go for it. So anyway, it worked out fine, and but I typically wouldn't put it on my paintings, only my cards. Anyway, so thank you very much for all of the critique paintings and reference pictures that you've been sending in. I probably have enough now to cover, and the week that I'm going to do that will be the last Wednesday in November. Okay, so if you get a lot out of the critique, I've done another one. You can take a look at that and how I talk about paintings that people have sent in to me, and they send the reference picture, but they also tell me what it is that they need some help with in their painting, or what they're not sure about, or whatever. I need to know that information too in order to best help you. And if you subscribe or like this video, I really appreciate it. And just have a wonderful week.